us, because as we both know, without purpose, we would not exist.
It is purpose that created us. Purpose that connects us. Purpose that pulls us, that guides us, that drives us. It is purpose that defines. Purpose that binds us.
We are here because of you, Mr. Anderson. We're here to take from you what you tried to take from us.
Welcome to Silly Whales. This is a mental health podcast, and this show is for everyone, but it might not be for you. Why? We discuss things that are a little bit on the sensitive side, you know. It's a mental health podcast. What do you want from us? We're going to discuss things to do with death, wanting to death, and things relating to death, but also just, depression, anxiety, and all those things as well. In the description below, there is links to mental health charities like Samaritans and different helplines that you can access. And upon feedback, we might add some United States links as well, if I remember. If not, then there is an equivalent to that stuff for you in the United States. I think in most countries there is there for you. Did I miss anything in the intro?
No, I didn't know you were going to say half of the things in the intro, so I think you're good.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. This I'm going to do like a reintroduction for the sake of just newer listeners, because there's a slight uptick. This is a journal episode. The show operates in two different ways. We have journals in which we just talk about our week or like our lives in the last week or so. It's not really the most evergreen thing because it will be outdated fairly quickly. We do skip over massive topics. For example, we never mentioned that Trump won the election. We actually never mentioned it properly. We just hinted at it. So if you're watching this and you're going back through listening to this, and you're going back through all the episodes, it would just you're waiting to hear what we think about Donald Trump or whatever. We just missed it completely, and it wasn't by choice. We just didn't really talk about it. And then we have presents, and presents are more of a deep dive where we put some time and effort into researching a topic. We've had a few. I think the first few episodes of presents were about us in school, and then we did one on self-worth. And we did one fairly recently. What was the most recent one? The one that hasn't gone up.
The one that hasn't gone out?
Yeah. We have one on gaming. That's it.
We have one on gaming,
that'll be coming out soon. We might redo that one, so it might take a little bit longer. And then we have quite a few coming out. And we love doing those. And we have them coming more frequently in the new year. It's December. It's early December.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, how's your... Actually, do you know what? I'm going to ask you a very, blunt question.
Okay.
How's your seasonal depression?
Significantly better than any other year of my life, probably.
Is that because of... Have we discussed the new job, right? Yeah, we did.
We discussed... so about... Well, not even 2 weeks. This would have been 3 weeks ago. I had my... maybe even more, actually. Scratch everything. On the 15th of November, I think we did an episode, and then we chatted about it because it was my first day on the job. So I had an idea or kind of an explanation of roughly what it was and everything. But I hadn't had much experience or really got into how I generally or knew anything about how I actually feel about the job. Now I have had I've had 3 full weeks, and this is my 4th week that I'm going into. It's a shorter work week for me because I'm going to be doing a much longer work week in a couple of weeks from now because of Christmas. But largely speaking, to answer that question very specifically, is to answer it directly, I would say it has been probably better than it has been in a very long time. I would almost go as far to say that in many situations I actually I'm not experiencing it. Or I would say that the feeling is of not experiencing it. Because in part because of the schedule I now have at this job. And that has had a huge impact. I think the job itself has had a huge impact on the way I've been feeling, but I think generally the actual effect of the schedule, where I wake up at a very early hour, and go to sleep at an earlier hour has shifted everything so that now, this is 3:25 that we're currently recording. I finished work an hour and 25 minutes ago. I finished at 2:00, right? And I walked home from work with it being daylight. It's the UK in December. It's not exactly like the most attractive like moment in time. We haven't got like LA, fucking beauty light or whatever it is called. We haven't quite got that, but it makes a significant difference. And I've also been walking so much as a result of not even the commute, because I always commuted like by walking, and I commute even further before. But my job involves me walking around a lot and things like that. So I think that at the moment, and this is sort of I don't know how this would relate to seasonal affective disorder specifically, but there's sort of two avenues of this, which is the spending my like free time, out and about time, not at work time during the day, like having daylight available, and sleeping earlier is a benefit in a way because I'm sort of skipping some of the dark hour time, which I don't need to.
Yeah, you go to bed really
experience.
early because like we play games a lot, and normally your schedule was like you'll be home around like 6 something, 7ish, and you'll play
Yeah,
games until like maybe midnight. If we're lucky, we'll push it to 1 o'clock in the morning sometimes, because then you work. I think you started work at 2 o'clock before.
I'd start work at 12, generally
Yeah.
speaking, but
So
then
then
I'd
it was
also
like,
start sometimes at 9 and then sometimes at 3 p.m. So it's
yeah.
very like
So you had like
fluctuates.
more of a night window, and socially you think, oh yeah, he has time to do things in the evening, but in reality it's a lot of like nighttime based thing that you come home, it's dark already, and then you're playing games, and I'm guessing the room is fairly dark in itself as well, and it's like it's fairly like it I don't know, from how you described it felt very suffocating, and it felt very like you were trapped in a really, I don't want to say toxic, I think that's an overused word, but I think a very like diminishing return of a schedule cycle. So now there's still a little bit of like, I don't want to call it sun, but light outside. Um,
Hmm.
your day, you now go to bed. Well, you get ready to go to bed like at 8:45 the latest. We're playing games, and Joe's like, "Yeah, I'm leaving after this mission, guys. Come on." Joe is an
Yeah.
American. I don't know why I made Joe American. Um, but and then like he leaves that island, and we're just there like, oh damn, it's early, and then like that rubs off on all of us, because I think that myself, Cassis, we go, oh, okay, we're going off too, and I found myself going to bed at like 9:15, 9:30 as well, which is a pleasant thing because I wake up and I'm feeling a little bit more refreshed. Like, I'm in a state now where things can move a little bit slowly at the moment, so then I'm trying to take full advantage of it. Uh, so
Yeah,
yeah, it's rubbed
I I
off.
I used to have this theory about like wanting to do this once upon a time, which was like, when it's dark, basically go to sleep. Like maybe not quite when it's dark, but in the winter, why don't I have a schedule where I go to sleep much earlier and, wake up at whatever time it feels natural, right? And because I thought, well, like I am missing the most important part of my day, and it feels like sorry, I should be clear. It feels like I'm missing. I'm spending time like after I finish work or after I finish school or uni or whatever, and I just spend all of it just kind of like in the like doing similar things, but in a much like sadder environment. Not to make a pun out of it, but um, and the and I always had that theory, and I didn't know if it would actually like make a difference. But even though I had this theory and I thought, oh, I should do that, I didn't actually have a push to do it because I didn't actually have to get up early for any reason. And I do think that this is a big part of it, right? Like I have to get up early. I mean, even as we approach Christmas, I'm gonna have to get up even earlier. And me and my one of my colleagues who were talking about it, and we're almost like, it's probably going to be better for us because there's going to be less people in when we're doing our job, and honestly, we're just going to get more daylight, like, like at a time of the year where it's going to be diminishing, and it's diminishing at quite a rate, right? And then from December 21st or 22nd, the days will start getting longer again. So it's interesting. I don't know how much of, there's lots of elements to this. There's the fact that I walk a considerable amount more than I did before. Obviously, I was doing physical work, but it's still different. The fact that I have more daylight hours, and also the fact that my schedule is better. All of these things, I think, are somewhat of an effect. I do also think that from the perspective, when specifically talking about like the going to sleep stuff, I did realize just how important sleep was. Right. I think being at this job has actually made me realize how big a deal sleep is, and how bad my sleep has been for so long. Like and also how you almost don't need to have that as much sleep if you're sleeping at better times of the day. Like, it's hard to explain, but if I accidentally like fall asleep at 11 and then wake up at 4:40, because I need to go to work, I'm actually very regularly not that tired. Like, there are times where I am, but most of the time I'm actually kind of okay. And then like by the time I get to work, I'm actually fine at 6 o'clock, but there are also times where I've noticed, like, yeah, I've gone to sleep at what I want to do. I've gone to sleep at 9 o'clock. I've woken up at 4:40, and I feel like fucking amazing. I've never felt better, and it makes a significant difference in my work, because my work is very intense and requires a lot of mental stamina, like to keep your focus the whole way through. I think that's like one of the biggest challenges of it. And it's not like like one of the things I had to deal with before was like a sort of social stamina, right? Like a mental social stamina. At this job, I don't really need to have the social stamina in the same way, but the focus is very much there, right? So trying to keep that going, I've noticed how much of a difference it makes whether I've eaten properly the night before, and because I don't really generally eat before I go, but how I eat the night before, and then how well my sleep is. My sleep is like by far the biggest factor when it comes down to it. But even then, it's like, I like I say, I can get away with, I think, a bit more, despite the fact that I might only be sleeping like 4.5 hours or something like that, but I still feel great. So I think that there is, it does have a detrimental effect over the course of a work week if I kept doing that, but I still find it better. And again, I don't know how much of, and I can also talk about how, maybe there have been hormonal changes because I'm reaching certain age range of things or whatever. Like there's so many things, and unfortunately, like with everything, like when I was 21 and I had the big sort of moment where like my depression severely went away, my anxiety severely went away. The opposite of the big sad, right? Like the big sad, like being uplifted in like a very and feeling like a burden had been taken off me that I'd experienced for so long. Like, I mean, if I genuinely, like, without being coy about it whatsoever, if I still felt the way I did when I was 21, I'm sure I would be dead by now. I'm sure of it, because I was already struggling so much at uni, and I was already struggling in so many other ways. I had reached the point where I was wanting to spite the universe by just staying alive forever. But I don't know if I could have done that for as long as, I kind of imagined I could, especially because I even though I've improved, I've seen myself go through many stages of where things have been very low, right? So to imagine being the state I was back then and feeling very low, like unless there were things that really came to support me and change things, but at that time, sorry, just that's a bit off track, but that time when that happened, I was very, very much, I very much didn't know what the reason was. Like, I couldn't explain why it happened. And that's kind of the similar thing I'm at now. I think I have a better understanding in this case, because I think there are like actual things that have very recently changed that I can point to. But I don't know like of everything, like probably all of them to some extent. But like, for example, in my case, let's say I don't let's say this is a temporary job. Let's say I don't end up with a permanent position. What am I going to do? Like, what part of my life that I'm dealing with now am I going to take forward with? Like, for example, I've noticed that I'm much sadder on my days off in many cases when I don't. And I've realized that part of it is because I don't walk as much. I don't leave the house as often because I don't tend to like have like things I can do. And a lot of the time recently the weather's been a bit shit. So I've not been going out as much. And I'm like, oh, I've noticed that probably is something I should actually actively say. I need to walk for an hour and a half minimum every day, right? I need to walk like a certain distance every day, like as a minimum, that kind of thing. And also spend time outside, like even if the weather's shit. I mean, that's kind of the problem. Unfortunately, it's the UK, can't help it. And it's winter. But like it. And of course, if you're someone who works, and your work is, a 9 to 5, then you could be in the worst situation right now in terms of you never see the light of day practically. That was truly the worst part about the 12 to 6 was that I very quickly hit the I'm leaving and it's dark earlier than most other people did, right? Like in the year when that started happening. So even though it felt like I can remember earlier on in this year, especially like in the early days when we started recording, how bad that was. And you can tell like the difference between the way I probably have been more recently and the way I was back then is distinctly different. There is a difference. And of course, again, loads of things. I'd recently moved like less than 6 months when we started recording and things like that. I get it. There's loads of factors. I just can't. But I have to like. I want to try and like focus on some things and try to bring them forward, and then just see what happens. You never know. And if I start to regress in certain ways, but I still feel good about it or whatever, I think that's just a consistent problem we're gonna have. And I mean, I think this is why you find on the internet like so many examples of either like health fads or like food fad kind of stuff or dietary fad stuff and other sorts of things where medical pseudo medical fad stuff where people are just like where there's just all of these different pieces of advice and tips of what you should be doing, and like don't drink this, don't eat that, don't like do all of this and this and this, and it can be very overwhelming. And I think part of the reason is because there's actually just a lot of things that could affect you, and some things will affect some people much more than others because that's what their brain or body needs. And then you have like the fact that most people have not experienced every single one of these things, so there's no way for them to. And I mean, how it's very difficult as a single person to be like, oh, I'm just going to do every single one of these things individually with like zero outside like tampering on the situation, to be like, oh yeah, this is, and be like, yes, this is the thing that's helping me, and this is the thing that's good for people to do. It's very difficult, but I think that's why we come across that. My only kind of desire is to take what I have noticed and take what has felt right and push that and bring that forward and try to do that, especially because you asking me this question is the reason why I noticed it, right? It wasn't you asking the question, sorry, but the topic of your question is exactly why I noticed it, because I did think to myself, shouldn't I be feeling worse? Like this is like my memory has told me I should be feeling worse and I'm not, and that's a profound thing to think and feel, so and by the way, this is me doing a full-time job. This is the first time I've ever done full-time hours, like as in 37 and a half paid hours, 40 hours a week, kind of with being what you're looking at. I've never done a job where that's actually been the case. I might not, even if I get a permanent version of this job, but the fact that I am experiencing that and I'm not having a problem with that part of it, I think is saying something, right? At least some level that I am doing a lot better. It could also be, hey, I changed my job, I'm doing something different, and guess what? My old job I really hated. Like, even though there were people I liked there, I didn't like it, all of this being said, sorry, just for legal reasons, this is all my opinion, not anything to do with my company or whatever. But that I worked at, it's the same company for both, so who gives a shit? The whole point is that I have, I didn't like the old job. It didn't work for me anywhere near as well as what this is doing for me right now. So again, there's so many aspects to this. But how about you actually? Because you're one of the, because you talked about this a little bit before, where you kind of have more of an issue with summer, but I don't know how sad winter necessarily affects you, or if it affects you in the same way or as much, or if you just get fucked by both winter and summer in that respect, but you still like winter more. Like, I'm not quite sure what
I'm
the
just
split is.
generally sad in general. So it's worse during the summer.
Yeah.
Slightly better in the winter. I really like the cold. I love the cold. So there's no better feeling.
Hmm.
And yeah, now it's not ridiculously bad. It's just, we're waiting through. We're waiting through. The year's gone slowly but quickly. It's crazy to think that, I was in a fairly bad place this time last year, so I think it's better now. Like, there's things I'm looking
Oh,
forward to, like sparring and things like that to look forward to. And to be honest, even in like the midst of the bad stuff last year, I was doing surprisingly okay.
you were
So I
quite
think there's
productive,
like,
right?
well, yeah, this podcast started.
Yeah,
Like,
true.
we're nearly at a year of this, which is a pretty big milestone. I think this has been like the year of finding consistency.
Hmm.
With being at Muay Thai at least once a week. Hopefully next year it's like 2 or 3 times a week. My Duolingo streak of 220 something days. We'll take those wins. This show, pretty much every single week, and it's good. We'll take those wins. We're just looking for different opportunities now. We're just seeing where we can take everything. I say we. It's more me. Where I can take every opportunity, and when it comes to we, like the show, different opportunities, so we can expand the show if that. So it'll be interesting to see where the show goes. I think we're approaching another transformative period in the show's short history. But yeah, I think I've been kept occupied quite well. There's been a good amount of game playing recently. You
Yeah,
guys
that has been
experienced,
nice. That has
yeah,
been nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
You guys experienced me playing a single player game yesterday called The Political Process. That's a great game. It is effectively, if you know Foot Manager, you'll love it because it's political Foot Manager. You control every aspect of your political career. So you can run for something as small as a school district board, all the way up to the presidency, and everything in between as well. So I've made myself in the game, Alex Cupid. I have a campaign manager, and I also have I gave myself a wife, by the way. I clicked the button, and you couldn't really undo it. So I have a wife, and I don't really know what to do with it. like,
I
uh,
will say, just for anyone who hasn't seen this, and obviously give it a search if you want. It looks like a Flash game. Like I
yeah,
can't. Is it like a Is it very like HTML? I'm not quite sure what it is, but it gives me a
yeah.
very strong vibe of something that I've
It's
seen
very like
before.
mid 2000s, like mouse breaker style game. In terms of like the graphics of it all, it's
I'll
very
take
2D.
your word for it.
It's very
Yeah,
like simplistic based. It's it's very heavily detailed and oriented. If you like,
it's very dry as well.
if you like simulation style games in which you create the stories within them, then you'll love it. Like another good one is like if you like Out of the Park, which is like a baseball simulation style game where the story is created by the interactions you have, similar to Foot Manager. Like the game has no story, but as you start playing it, the story will develop. Like you develop a rivalry with a different manager in the game, and you want to like destroy their team and all that stuff. Like so, things like that have been keeping me fairly active because it requires my imagination to work, and that's always fun.
If you,
Um,
I, I'm,
yeah, go on.
I feel like I've talked to you about this before, but there's a game called Suzerain that I think I remember mentioning to you, because I feel like that is just, to me anyway, it's a much more sort of dramatic narrative. It's in a fictional world with holy shit, like with the amount of depth of like stuff you have to read and understand in order to like follow, in order to like make political decisions or whatever in it, it's fascinating. Like it's a really interesting game. I've really enjoyed it. I've honestly not gone back to it just because there's
Yeah.
other games that I like comfort play, but like
Here's a question for
holy
you.
shit,
Is it raining
crazy.
where you are? Is it raining right now?
I don't know if it's raining or not, but it was certainly.
Okay, 'cause I felt like I could hear the rain in the background, or something in the background.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's I don't know. Maybe it's that. I'm not sure. But yeah, like I think just I mean, we have been playing games more recently, and that's been a fun time. Like I think that I I mean, I think I talked about this before, but I think I've been trying to be more about it. Like there are times where I really do find myself going, oh, I really don't want to socialize, and then and things like that. But one big thing I've been trying to make myself do is like, you know, get involved with some sort of social activity as much as possible. Um, so you know, sometimes the social activity I want is kind of simple. Like I almost don't want it to be anything like too intensive in any way. And sometimes even gaming reaches a point where it's too intensive for me, right? Like I'm almost like what we're doing now, where even though we're recording or whatever, right? And this is going to be a thing, I just see this as me chatting with you. So ultimately, this is the least intensive thing. And sometimes I'm in the mood to just chat, right? Like to just chat with you in Kestis, whatever, and actually not have any sort of and not really have any sort of like thing going on. But I know that that can be boring, and I know that that can be samey or whatever sometimes. So like the gaming angle has always been like a good sort of like a way for us to interact like socially without necessarily needing to
Yeah,
like
yeah,
also if you just chat all the time you do go over the same shit over and over, right? Like it's easy to like not it's easy to do. It's one of the things I was hoping that we didn't do with this podcast. It was like we didn't go over the exact same shit over and over again. It's like one of the big things
yeah.
I was always worried that we might do, especially because we were doing like a journal style thing where it was meant to be where it was weekly.
Well, that's the thing because
Um,
we have this thing where since the show has started, I might be completely wrong with this. I felt like our lives were pretty stagnant in a way, like in our methodology, how we think about things, how we navigate the world, and all that stuff. I think since the show started, coincidentally, we've taken a few more risks with ourselves. We've approached situations differently. We've tackled tasks in a way that we normally wouldn't tackle tasks. Like, I think, yeah, like for example, you changing jobs and your desire to do so and your desire to adapt to a different schedule. Like those are things that I don't know whether the Joe of well, the London Joe would have done. And it's like that is I think this show came at a good time so people can really see our growth in general because these are big steps in growth that we're making. So it's like there's a clear difference in who we both are and how we have been like shaped not by the show, just alongside the show.
yeah, I would say that like in the very specific case of like the job thing, I think that there's something to be said that there's almost a form of necessity to that sort of force that. Like, we're sort of going beyond just the idea of like, well, I need to have a job. It's more like I need to do something different. Like I can't be doing this because, the job that I applied for was, I mean, when I go back through phone conversations I had with different people, the kind of I didn't want to be there later than April, right? And I was still there later than April. So, I didn't want that, and yet I was there. So I don't think I was necessarily taking a risk in this case. I mean, I just wanted to change like location, if anything. Like I was just like, I need to do something different. And then it ended up being that what I applied for ended up turning into a different job. And then I was like, oh my God, it's even a different job. What is this job? I've never even heard of it. I don't know what it is. Then and now I'm like, okay, personal shopper. Okay, great. So there's an element to it which is kind of like coincidence or luck in a sense, but I wouldn't be surprised if, I don't think it's like wrong to say that maybe there is something to be said for what you're saying in general anyway, but in that specific case, I guess maybe that like, hey, I was willing, like I think the big thing that for me, like for this year in that specific case, was the fact that I went from a mindset of I need to go to a job which is not in retail. I need to go to a job that is nothing like what I'm doing now, to, hey, just don't do like if you're that sad where you are, and part of the reason at least that you can think of in your head is that you are where you are, just move, like try something different, like find out essentially what the problem is, and you know do something different, because at the moment you're reaching a sort of emotional state that is not viable and is not sustainable. You have to move, you have to do something. And that came from a sort of relinquishing of the idea that I had to do something that was, I mean, I'm going to be real. Like in my mind, I very much like, despite the fact that I do this job and I did this job for so long, I still very much downplay my role, and I still downplay my the difficulty of it, or because I have a very problematic notion of like work to a certain extent, and certainly of what I should be doing. In my head, I feel like I should be doing X, Y, and Z, but that's very but I think that there's a lot of issues with that, right? So maybe even just simply kind of like get rid of your pride a little bit, and actually focus on the issue. Like, if the issue is this, then do something, right? Just change if that's what you want to do. Don't be like really sticky. Don't stick in the mud constantly about this and be like, okay, well, if I can't get anything, then I have nothing. It's like, what kind of mentality is that? Find something better than what you're doing now. It doesn't matter like if it's like not the perfect thing, just something better. So I suppose like that could be seen as like a more risk-takey thing of just like, hey, I might still be up, I might not be in the best place, but at least I'm making a difference. And weirdly, that's kind of like a risky swing for me, quote unquote, in terms of like my mental state around it.
Yeah. Like, I think there's a lot to be said though, because I'm trying to think about, well, where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, do we need to do an end of year review? And my honest opinion of it is no, because I've never cared for like New Year's Day, and I don't really care for Christmas that much either, and I don't really feel like there's a massive change from the 31st of December, whatever the fuck, to the 1st of January. I don't feel like, oh, this is my time to change and transform. And the Ultra Instinct music plays, and come the 4th of January, it's all the same shit anyway. So it's like, that sounds so fucking pessimistic. But I just don't hold any weight in the idea of like New Year, New Me, or New Year's revelations and all. Is it revelations? Yeah, New Year's revelations. I think
Resolutions.
Resolutions. Revelation sounds cooler. That's why I stuck to it.
Biblical.
And like, it's just, yeah. So on the topic of, hey, we should do an end of year review, I don't think it's worth it. Maybe with more of a marketing push, then yeah, sure, but no.
I mean, the thing is that when, like it or not, I think I said this at the beginning of this, we started basically a new year. Like, we did do that, like whether we like it or not, which means that a year anniversary is following like very much the Gregorian calendar essentially. And I there's a part of me that actually does slightly push back on this, because I don't think that the actual date specifically itself is that important. I don't think like New Year's Day itself. I think New Year's Day currently is one of the worst times to do it. I think Chinese New Year is by far a better New Year, like, period, in my mind. Like the as you go into spring kind of thing, like, it's nice. I think like having it like shortly after Christmas even is like such a silly like time to do it. There's a load of history as to why that is, but the point is that it doesn't really work fundamentally. I don't really appreciate it that much. But I think there is an appreciation that maybe should exist for the idea of following that cycle that is kind of natural, right? Like that there is, despite the fact that the calendar is like a very, the calendar we have in the West is not arbitrary, but is, uses a lot of makes a lot of decisions that don't necessarily need to be made for it. It doesn't change the fact that what it's actually trying to replicate slash demonstrate is this kind of cycle, this yearly cycle, these moments in which we can do the thing that you say of looking back on times and looking back on what has come before. The notion of hey, we're going to moments of birth within natural states, like the idea of the lambs in spring and things like that, and all of these and for people, a lot of people, it's looking forward as well as having experienced it previously, but now looking forward to things coming. So I think that there is very much a sort of circadian rhythm-esque, although it's not circadian because that would imply daily. But there is a rhythm to sort of the natural world, just simply because of the way that the Earth revolves around the sun. That means that a yearly thing does make sense to me, or at least a New Year's style idea. I just think it should be changed. I just think that we should just use the Chinese one because it's a much better one. And
you hipster fuck.
I also like I like Chinese New Year. It's nice. It's fun.
I thought you were gonna say I like Chinese people. What the fuck?
I mean, I like Chinese food. No, I'm kidding. But Chinese people, though, I'm not so sure.
Now we're dead. Now it's all over.
But I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that. Or maybe that I should be clear. I don't know. I'm not trying to convince you. I'm just trying to explain why I think it's actually not why I think that outside of just tradition, I think that there is actually a reason for it to exist. Because that's the whole point about this. For me, Christmas is a similar idea. It's at a shit time of year to make you feel better. That's why it's nice. It's the pagan winter solstice festival. That's essentially it. So it's nice to have at the darkest time of year to have kind of let's get together and let's have this very social interaction with each other. That's why I like it.
I'm not denying any of that. I'm saying that I don't have it. I don't place any value in it. I don't.
Fair enough.
It's not about. If someone says if you were to be really pushy and say let's do a year in review, I'll do it, of course. But I would never broach the thing of going we should do a year in review. Just because. Well, I've already said why. But in general, I just don't place a stock in it. I'm trying to think. In other news, things outside of... Is there anything else that's happened in your week or anything like that you want to go over?
Well, I was going to shout out that thing. Is that okay?
Yeah, do it.
Yeah. So I think there was another thing I was going to shout as well, but I can't think of it. I can't bring it to mind, so I'm just going to have to leave it. The Yogscast are a group, a YouTube channel and a sort of general group. They've been around since 2011 or something like that, or maybe 2000. It's very basically it's been a while. They're 14 years or something like that. But they have an event called the Jingle Jam, which is it used to occur over the course of December, but they've reduced it because that was very intense for them. Where there's a lot of specific streams, they all generally get together in Bristol, which is where I've actually seen a couple of them when I lived in Bristol for the short period I did, which was fun. And although they hadn't moved to the office, which was right near where I lived by the time I left, so that was unfortunate because I would have actually been able to kind of see them more often. But I know some of the pubs that they went to, for example, at the time. And but to be clear, the Yogscast have a thing every year, which has now been called the Jingle Jam. It was called different things at different points. and now it runs over the first 2 weeks of December, and it is a huge charity drive. They have raised significantly large amounts of money. I think they've raised, over the course of the years that they've done it, they've raised over 25 million, but I don't remember what the actual number is now. They're probably close to 30 million, if not already beaten that. But currently, I think, on 1.2 million, 1.23 million. And you might be asking, well, how did they do that? Well, you can obviously donate as normal. Some people donate lots, and some people donate just a kind of minimum number. This minimum number, you can donate a small number, but the big drive that they've like pushed for is that they get lots of game developers to give them free Steam keys basically to their games. Basically, going to them, asking them, hey, would you be willing to give some Steam keys? And then we'll be able to, and then we will essentially, in as much as like, yeah, you're getting it for free, they're actually in many ways also like, what's the word for it? Advertising the games. Like some games have actually done significantly well as a result of being on the Jingle Jam, because it ends up in the hands of people, and then they make content out of it, and then people see the content and then they buy it themselves. So lots of things have done well off of it, and most of the time they're not asking like big corporations. So if some of the game, you can go to tiltify.com/jinglejam, I think is the actual URL. And you can see all of the games that are available. It's not specifically, even if you don't like all of the games, even if you only like a few of the games, that's fine. But generally, the actual value of the Humble Bundle, it's called, is very high. Yeah, jinglejam.tiltify.com. So if you go to that, 1.596 million. There you go. That's a lot more than I thought. So yeah, lots and lots of money raised. And I just think it's a really cool thing that they've done every year. It's something I always forget about until around November, when certain people start talking about like preparing for it and things like that, finding developers that will give games. And it's such a big deal. They have like 8 main charities, I think, that's on it. You can donate to a specific charity, or you can donate to all of them, like kind of equally. It's up to you. I'll just quickly go through some of them just so that people, and some of them are actually relevant for us, which is why I think it makes sense to talk about this as well. Autistica, Campaign Against Living Miserably, both of those obviously big ones. Cool Earth, this is one specifically about climate. Actually, I'll explain each one quickly. Autistica, building evidence-based solutions for young autistic people to make society more inclusive by 2030. Campaign Against Living Miserably, or CALM, running a life-saving suicide prevention helpline and providing mental health resources for all who need them. Cool Earth, a new approach to fighting climate change, back Indigenous peoples and protect the rainforest. Sarcoma UK, funding research supporting those affected by sarcoma cancer and campaigning for better treatments. The Trevor Project, working to end suicide among LGBTQ plus young people through suicide prevention and crisis intervention. The Grand Appeal, which is like from Wallace and Gromit's Grand Appeal, creating the Jingle Jam, building a unique facility that will help sick children and their families at Bristol Children's Hospital. War Child, protecting, educating, and advocating for the rights of children impacted by the ongoing conflicts in Gaza, Lebanon, and worldwide. This is the specific things they're all giving, obviously. And then the WDC, or Whale and Dolphin Conservation, helping to protect the endangered Amazon river dolphin and launching a global education program for schools. So those are, obviously, there's more that they do, but these are the specific things that they're doing in this specific case. Like if you're raising money, then what is it for? I think they each have like a certain amount that they are hoping to get. So if you see one has already reached its goal, then you might look at your second choice and be like, I would like that one to get my money then instead. It's just all good. There really is no downside. There's lots of creators involved and stuff, and it's incredibly wholesome. There's lots of great content that comes out of it. And genuinely every year when I forget about it and then it comes back round and I realize, oh, that's going to be happening soon, I suddenly get much happier. And obviously, this is probably the happiest moment in my life around this point in years. So I'm appreciating all of this even more. And for the first time, I've actually in the position where I actually can talk about this, and it's like a public thing that people will hear. So if you've not heard of it, take a look. The Yogscast and jinglejam.tiltify.com. And if you have heard of this and you're just like, hey, he's a Yogs boy, there you go. Yeah, and if you want to be super selfish about it all, then donate 35 quid and you might get like free games that easily trump the amount of money. I shouldn't say that word. That easily go over the amount of money that you would have donated anyway. And yet it's a donation, and it's not, and it's going towards like really good causes. There you go. That was the one thing that like I remember. I wanted to say it before the Jingle Jam started, and then that last week, like we ended up talking about other things, but I've got it now within the first week of the actual Jingle Jam. So yay!
Yeah, charities.
Charities.
What else is there? So that you done?
Is that me done? I think so. Largely, yeah. I think yeah. There you go. I don't know. I always do that thing. I always say like, oh yeah, I think so, and then like continue for no reason.
So Snape might be black.
Oh,
yeah, that happened.
Might be.
Yeah, apparently they offered the role of I don't watch Harry Potter, but Severus Snape to a black guy, and of course this is like this the worst thing that's ever happened to society, and it's the worst thing ever. We're all gonna die. There's the thing. I love it when this happens, when a character is cast who's clearly fictional, and they cast him differently to how they've previously seen other incarnations of the character. So the first thing we get is the people crying about, oh goodness, they're blackwashing everything. This is the worst thing ever. How could you do this? And then you get we need to make an MLK movie, but Martin Luther King's played by a white guy. And you kind of see how weak the arguments are in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you get the middle roads, which is middle class white women, which is middle class people, white people who say, oh, I just think I'm not racist, but I just think that, we should just stick to what the original readings and books say, and that is just covert racism, really. But hey, here we are. We're at a point now where producers, directors, writers have to be careful about how they write characters, but also how they cast characters, because we are in a point now where we just get upset over anything that isn't white, somewhat tall, and somewhat conventionally attractive. We just get upset about it. And the thing is that it's always the same group of people who are very outward in it, and so the same group of people who are very covert with it. Now, here's the thing. The people who are crying that this is all wokeness and DEI this and DEI that, I have to ask you, the majority of the people, no one fucking cares. Who the fuck actually cares? Like, it is a fictional character, so it's up to whoever's making the art form to do whatever they feel makes the character good or not. Whatever the story is.
What kind of production is this, by the way? Because
a Harry Potter TV show.
Oh, a TV show. Okay, yeah. Because obviously Alan Rickman can't come back in this. He's dead. Alan Rickman played Severus Snape incredibly well, but he's dead. There's no beyond the fact that most of the characters aren't going to be played by the same actors, I assume. What is the sort of like expectation that it has to be similar? I don't really I very much, and this is making me think about Shakespeare now and how and the idea of like someone being like, oh, you can't play as, despite the fact that there is like a black character in Shakespeare being played by white people, largely speaking for most of history, and then is actually played by a black actor, and then that's seen as a weird thing. Yeah. So I especially when it comes to this, it is not the same one way or the other anyway. I don't think that it's the same when we talk about a character described as white in a fictional thing being played by a black actor.
The question I always say is this. No one can ever give an example of a black character being changed to a white person acting as them. And I find it quite funny that we can't, because there's over 90 years of cinema in which that takes place.
Yeah.
From minstrels, from people portraying Native Americans, to white actors in America playing Egyptian gods and all that stuff. And even recent movies like, white guys playing samurais or whatever the fuck. Like, this isn't anything remotely new. And the same people who say, well, we should make Black Panther white. Well, the whole point is that Black Panther's blackness is a whole point of his whole character. Like,
Yes.
Snape's character isn't based on his whiteness, so you don't have to really care. Like, if I were to then say, hey, do you know, let's take the really like racist guy from American History X, let's make him black, that probably wouldn't work. You know, like
Right.
that probably wouldn't work. Because his whiteness is what makes his character relatable. In that's not relatable, makes his character relevant. That's part of the whole thing. So in the same
he's a
way,
white neo-Nazi.
you know, there's certain things that have to happen. If you make it a black neo-Nazi, you end up just making a comedy film, and then you end up looking at half of the black conservatives that are in,
or you make a different
America,
story, right? Like it's just it's an actively different story, because like you could have a black, you can have black neo-Nazis, but it's
like,
a completely
there's a
different story. Yeah.
Like we struggle to understand fiction, non-fiction, and what actually makes a character. And you start to realize, oh, wait a second, a lot of people who are complaining about this don't really understand like anything other than this is what it looks like, this is what it needs to look like, because I say so. Like James Bond being black was like one of the things that was being like pandered around. Like, Idris Elba to play James Bond. A lot of people were happy about it until people were like, well, Ian Fleming wrote that he was a white man he's a fictional character and he is not tied to his race.
Did he write that he was like 12 different people? Like
Yeah,
what do you
yeah.
mean? Like I get that generally speaking they're all white and all have like relatively similar features, but not really. I mean, does David Craig look like fucking Sylvester Stallone or whatever? It's not Sylvester Stallone.
David Craig is very different to Daniel Craig. I don't know who David Craig is.
Sorry,
but
Daniel Craig. Sorry,
Yeah.
I don't know why I said David Craig. Well, it's
David Craig sounds like a League Two right winger.
Yeah.
That's a football reference, not
Pierce
real.
Brosnan, Daniel Craig, and Stallone, right? Like they're all exactly the same. They sound the same. They look the same. Definitely.
Did you say Stallone?
I did say Stallone because I can't think of his name. I'm very bad with names.
Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah,
He's never played James Bond.
Yeah, I know the Scottish guy is who I'm trying to think of.
Sean Connery.
Sean Connery. There you go. Yeah, it's just
the
letter
give it a little
S.
smack.
Yeah. Yes, Sean Connery. They're all exactly the same, and this is definitely none of them have not looked like any of the like descriptions given or whatever. Like, and you could say, oh yeah, but it's a small thing. But it's like, yeah, but that's the whole point. Is that if you're being pedantic about it, then like Hermione having blonde hair would be like, because I'm referring to Hermione especially because of her being played by a black actor as well. In like a play production or whatever it was, like years and years ago, like, which I think was also a colorblind play, by the way, specifically. But like the whole, but like if she had blonde hair, like would it really get anywhere near as much like hate or like despair or whatever as if it was played by someone with a different skin color? I don't necessarily think so.
Like, yeah. So I always look at those things, and I'm always thinking, well, you know, you can't these guys you can't win with. But then it also shows how uncomfortable the idea of change is for a lot of people, and the idea of somebody different being somebody of prominence in a role. Like, I always thought I had the idea of, hey, we need to get more representation, but also to give it to the best actors and things like that. Well, the best actors do get these roles. Like, it's so difficult to get a job based off your skin color, because if you're not good at something, guess what's going to happen? It's going to be really obvious that you're not good at it, and that goes for everybody. If you watch football, you see what happens when certain managers get into positions, but they really shouldn't have, you know, and then they struggle, and then it looks really bad, and it's like, oh, he needs to be put out of his misery. Somebody please sack him. Like, we all know it. We all see it. But now that this thing where whenever like a person of color fails, they go, "Oh, it's a clear DEI hire. That's why they failed." No, they were given the job because they're the best option for the job, and it turns out they suck at the job. They're probably gonna lose a job, and that's okay. People suck. It's okay. Like, you suck. You know, it's okay. You know, like, I suck. It's okay. If we lose our jobs because we're bad at things, okay, that's fine. If we lose our jobs because of our skin color, that's not okay. If we can't get in the door to apply for a job because of our skin color, that's a problem. Like, being inclusive doesn't mean that we're excluding anybody. So the idea of you being afraid of that signifies a lot about you as an individual rather than the society that you claim to live in. Oh, we live in a society. Like, let's be real here. Let's be real here. None of this really matters. But
Mm.
the effects, it kind of makes people show their faces. I can't wait to see a Sargon of Akkad 4-hour video on it about how bad it is and how he's crying himself to sleep at night while wanking to J.K. Rowling. I
Nice to see.
Yeah. So, in other news, I've this is really random to end the show on. I've stumbled across a YouTuber, and it's really fascinating to me because I don't understand. His name is Timothy Ward, and he lives a life. And this is not even a bad thing. I'm going to cut this out and clip it, and might tag him in it or whatever. But so I was just scrolling through YouTube, and I don't know how it got recommended to me, but like this random black guy, bald head black guy, and he's just the thumbnail just him staring into a camera. I was like, what the fuck is this? So I click on it, and 18 minutes later, I'm watching this, and he's like proper like power positivity. He's a very upbeat, and he's very much like and like he lives a life with, I'll say, I don't want to say he has no responsibilities, but I'll say he has very different ideas of responsibilities. Like from what I can gather, no kids, like no like wife or spouse, whatever. And he lives a life which he's kind of dictated for him. He goes fed up of like the rat race of work and the rat race of life, and he travels a lot. He hikes a lot. He lives and he breathes and he just enjoys things, and he is a positive guy. I'm trying to think to myself, what the fuck is this guy selling? He's got to be selling something. And I realized that there's not much for him to actually sell. And from what I can see, he's not selling much anyway. Like, people can donate to him and they can cash up him and all that stuff. But like, his main income is via like online videos, online content creation. And it's like, I watched him and I subscribed to him, and every single time I'm subscribed and I see his videos, I'm like, why am I subscribed to you? like, like, and I click on the live stream. I'm like, yeah, he can stay. I can stay subscribed to him. Like, he just says things, and it's just like, do you know what? Yeah, this is a nice message for people. I think it's a nice message for me. I think it's nice because I'm never a fan of the positive, overwhelming positive mindset, but for some reason, his way of doing it connects in a weird way. I don't know why. I'm waiting for him to be like to rip the mask off, and he's like, haha, buy my online course of how to conquer the world and take control of life for £45 a month and 25p every 2 minutes or whatever. But yeah, I don't
I
know if this is
was
a shout out or not, but it's just
well,
me
if you're
talking
gonna
about
tag
it.
him as well, but I mean, I'm looking at some of these titles. Like, I love the one that's like, "Why do people love bothering introverts?" Like, there's clearly certain titles that come up more where it's like, clearly this is the thing he's dealt with and he's talking about it and things like that. I think this is the reason why there is a distinct difference. Like, he's decided he wants to live the life the way he wants to. He's decided that he's going to be overwhelmingly positive. I've not seen a video. I'm literally just using the titles as like my version, by
Yeah,
understanding
like
this.
he had. I watched one of his live streams yesterday, and he literally went randomly. I had breakfast today. Yeah, I went down to like the breakfast. I had breakfast 2 days in a row. I've had breakfast now. I was like, yeah, breakfast. Oh my goodness! Like, and I have no idea whether he normally eats breakfast or not. And I was thinking it's really important to look at like how certain people can really make you invested into what they're doing, and that's what good content creators are capable of doing. They're able to grabbing you in. Not it's not parasocial. It's more you want to understand what they've dealt with, what they're dealing with, and how they feel about things. Because one, it's a good distraction away from you as well, from yourself. But two, because it's something that you can vicariously invest in, and it only becomes parasocial when your life is based around their life in a way. So you're waiting on them and things like that. I think it's really important that that boundary is set, and I think he does a really good job of it. Like, he's just fairly chilled out and relaxed. I'll, I'll be interesting to see. It'll be funny if he becomes a guest on the show in like a few months' time. That'll be hilarious. Because and I want to be in the worst mood possible as well. like, I want to be in a
Really
fucking
catch him.
steaming mood, and then at the end of the show, I'm like, I'm alive, guys. It's great to be here. like, let's live this lovely life. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's that.
interesting.
I have
I'll look
nothing
into
else.
it a little bit. Yeah, no, seems cool.
On
You've
that
got to
note,
go.
yeah, on that note, I have people to kick and people to get kicked by. Most likely the other way around. I'm just gonna get beaten up. Let's face it. We're gonna take 2 steps to the rear and get out of here. I'm in the wind. No, wait, sorry. We're in the wind. Do you know what? We're all in the wind. Because fucking storms are about. See ya.
I'm in the waterfall. Bye.
Oh yeah, wait, shit. The United Health Care guy got shot in the back. Capitalism.